All right, here we go. This is question number 14 from our 1314 homework number 7 in MyLab Math. And we have a system of linear equations they want us to solve using matrices. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate Gaussian elimination with back substitution. The first thing I want to do is I want to make this window a little bit bigger because I'm going to need a lot of room to work here. The next thing I want to do is I want to realize that when I'm getting a matrix into what we call row echelon form, that means that I need ones on the diagonal and zeros underneath. This is the destination we're headed to. And the first thing I need to focus on is getting this first one in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do that without doing any work is I'm going to use the bottom equation as my top row. Okay, so remember that we have x, y, z, and the constants. That is the format for writing your matrix. The bottom equation is 1x minus 4y. Notice there's no z, so we're going to put a 0 for z, and 27. Now, do you understand the reason I wrote the bottom row first is to achieve this 1 in the upper left-hand corner right here. The other two equations, it doesn't matter which order they go in. So I'm going to do the top equation next. That's going to be 3, 4, negative 5, negative 14. And the last row would be the middle equation, which is 5, 3, negative 1, 17. So that's the initial matrix, okay? The next step that I need to do is I need to try to get the 3 and the 5 to become zeros. I want to get this entire first column set up the way it needs to be for row echelon form. So that means the 3 and the 5 need to become zeros. And I'm going to use row 1 to do that. So our first row operation is going to be negative 3 times row 1 added to row 2, and that will produce a new row 2. Now, if you're going, how did you get that? I'm thinking, okay, what would I do to this 1 to turn it into some number that will cancel out this 3? Well, if I multiply it by negative 3, negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. And then if I add it to the 3 below it, it will make a 0. And so that's how I come up with that row operation. We're also going to do negative 5 times row 1 plus row 3 to get a new row 3. And this row operation is going to multiply the 1 by negative 5, which makes negative 5. And then when I add it to row 3, it'll make that 5 a 0. So here we go. We need to execute these two row operations. Notice that row 1 is involved, but row 1 is not going to change. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy down row 1, unchanged, and then we're going to execute the first row operation. Okay, so here we go. We've got negative 3 times 1, which is negative 3, added to row 2, adding to the corresponding element gives me a 0. And when I say corresponding element, that means the number right below it. Next, we've got negative 3 times negative 4, which is 12. Added to 4 is 16. Next, we've got negative 3 times 0, which is 0. Added to negative 5 stays negative 5. And last but not least, we've got negative 3 times 27, and that's where I'm going to have to bring up my calculator and make use of my calculator here. So we've got negative 3 times 27, right? And then I'm going to add that to the corresponding element. So I'm going to add that to negative 14. And this really shows how the row operation is being calculated. We're taking the negative 3 times the element in row 1, adding to the corresponding element in row 2 to get the new element in row 2. So that's going to be negative 95. And that takes care of the first row operation. All right, here we go. Next row operation, we've got negative 5 times 1, which is negative 5 plus 5 is 0. Remember, this time we're adding to row 3. Next, negative 5 times negative 4 is 20. 20 plus 3 is 23. Next, negative 5 times 0 is 0 added to negative 1 is still negative 1. And again with the calculator, this time we have negative 5 times row 1, which is 27, added to the corresponding element in row 3, which is 17. That is negative 118. And now that we've finished these two row operations, do you see that our first column is the way it needs to be? 1, 0, 0. The next thing I need to work on is getting this 16 to be 1. And then I can work on the 23, getting it to be a 0. So what is the row operation needed to turn the 16 into a 1? Well, we're going to multiply row 2 by the reciprocal of 16. So we're going to multiply row 2 by 1/16. And that'll produce a new row 2. Notice I'm only going to change row 2 this time. Row 1 and 3 will stay the same. So let's copy and paste rows 1 and 3. And then we're going to multiply every element in row 2 by 1/16, which is the same as dividing every element in row 2 by 16. So here we go. What is 0 divided by 16? Well, 0 divided by any number is 0, so that's going to stay a 0. 16 divided by 16 is 1. So that achieves that objective of getting that element to be 1. Negative 5 divided by 16. Uh-oh, this is where fractions come in. I'm sorry, I can't help it. Last, negative 95 divided by 16 is negative 95/16. Now then, we need to focus on getting the 23 to become 0. And since this element is 1, that means we're going to be able to use row 2 to work on getting the 23 in row 3 to be 0. Here's the row operation. We're going to multiply negative 23 times row 2 and add it to row 3, and that'll produce a new row 3. And that is the only row operation that I'm going to do this time. So again, notice this time row 3 is going to change. So rows 1 and 2 we can copy and paste. And Now to execute the row operation, we're going to multiply negative 23 times every element in row 2. Starting with 0, negative 23 times 0 is 0, and then add to the corresponding element in row 3 gives me a 0. Next, maybe it would be easier if I show this with the calculator. Okay, next we're going to take negative 23, multiply by 1, and then add it to 23. And do you see that achieves the objective of getting a 0 here? Okay, next. Now we're going to take negative 23 and multiply by negative 5/16. And this is where having the Casio is going to make your life a lot easier. Negative 23 times negative 5/16. And we're going to add that to the corresponding element in row 3, which is negative 1. And that's going to give us 99/16. And last but not least, and let's do it this way. Let's back up and go bam, bam, bam. Delete, delete, delete. Negative 23. This time we're going to multiply by negative 95/16. And then we're going to add that to the corresponding element in row 3, which is negative 118. And that's going to give us 297/16. And now I am to the last step, okay? So the last step here is to get this element to become 1, right? Because I need the entire diagonal here to be all 1s. And so this guy needs to be a 1. And the way we're going to achieve that is we're going to multiply row 3 by the reciprocal, by 16/99, and that'll produce a new row 3. And so this time rows 1 and 2 are not going to change. So we're going to copy and paste the first 2 rows. And now to execute the row operation, we're going to multiply every element in row 3 by 16/99. Of course, 0 times anything is 0, so that's going to leave these as 0. Any fraction multiplied by its reciprocal will produce a 1. And the last step, I'm going to use the calculator for. We're going to multiply 16/99 multiplied by 297/16. And I know that those 16s are going to cancel. I just don't know if this other fraction is going to reduce. And the calculator does it for me. That's why I like to use the calculator, is it takes care of all the manual labor. So that result is 3. And now the major diagonal is all 1s. Everything below that is 0s. And this is now what we call row echelon form. And that's necessary to do back substitution. So let's slide this over a bit and see if we have a correct answer. Does this match any of these answers here? I don't see that it matches any of those answers here. Okay, so after contemplating my situation here for a second, what I noticed is that the first row, 1, -4, 0, 27, matches B and D both. And the last row, 0, 0, 1, and 3, also matches. So it looks like it's going to come down to whether it's either B or D. And the middle row is what's going to determine that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guess B, and I guessed right. All right, so now let's do back substitution to find the solution. And what back substitution says, it says start at the bottom row and convert that back into an equation. So this says no x, no y, 1z, which is z, equals 3. Now then, we're going to go back up a row, and we're going to translate this back into an equation. And this row says no x, 1y, minus 5/16 z. But notice I know z is 3, so I'm going to substitute, equals negative 95/16. And then I can solve this for y. So if I multiply here, this is going to be negative 15/16 equals negative 95/16. Bringing the negative 15/16 over makes it a plus 15/16. Luckily, these already have a common denominator. Negative 95 plus 15 is negative 80/16, which reduces to negative 5. And now I need x. And so that means we're going to go back up to the top row and translate that back into an equation. That's going to be x minus 4y. Oh, but I know what y is, right? Y is negative 5, so I can substitute. There is no z, so no z equals 27. And then I can solve that for x. So negative 4 times negative 5, that's going to be plus 20. And then bringing the plus 20 over makes it a minus 20. And that gives me x is 7. And so we're going to go back over here to our MyLab Math. X is 7. And we're going to check. Yay. And we're correct. Now, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use the Casio to actually solve this system for you in order to get this answer we got down here, the solution set. What you want to do is go to Menu, and if you scroll down, option A is equation/function. You want to select that app, hit equals to select that app, and we have a simultaneous equation. A system of linear equations, that is a simultaneous equation. And the number of unknowns we had was 3, x, y, z, so we want to select 3. And do you see it's going to let you input the equations? All you need to do is input the coefficients. So here we go. First row, 3, 4, negative 5, and negative 14. And with the Casio, you just input these equations in the order they give them. It doesn't matter. Middle row, 5, 3. Now that's negative 1, right? If there's no number there, that's understood 1. Negative 1z and 17. And the last equation, again, that's going to be a coefficient of 1, x, negative 4y. Now, notice there is no z, so you do want to put 0, z, 0z, and 27. And then equals and equals again is going to tell you x is 7, equals again, y is negative 5, equals again, z is 3. And so the Casio, again, it will solve the system for you. And that is it for this particular problem. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below, or you can text me. And thanks for watching.